got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to the channel. We are here with another rookie mock draft in our series covering the formats and league settings that you, the people, are looking for. I'm John Bauer. Tonight I'm joined by Scott Connor. That's at Charles FFB on X, and JRich at Jaboy on X. What's up, guys?
JB, what's going on? Thank you for stepping in and hosting one of these. Finally, I think I've hosted 3, and now I get to just sit back and give the analysis that the people want. But I talk a lot on this channel. You talk a lot on this channel. I'm going to turn it over to, is this the debut on this channel for you, JRich? On the new YouTube channel? Is this your debut here?
It is the debut, Scott, and I'm very excited, but I do need to give John a little bit of shit right off the top because it is at Charles Chill FFB and at Chaboy JRich on Twitter or X. And of course, I am Chaboy JRich, the host of the Wake Up Show with Ray G, and I'm so excited because we're going to be doing a fantastic mock for you people. JB, tell the people what we're doing today.
What did I say for your handles?
The people know, and they will comment, and they will agree with me.
God. Good thing mine is listed right on the screen, but JRich's is not. So it's not like you can see it on there. But yeah, Chaboy JRich and Charles Chill FFB. But it's okay.
Wait, did I say at Chaboy Rich?
I think you said at Chaboy, and you said Charles FFB.
Yes, you cut off the JRich and you skipped the Chill, but otherwise you crushed it, my friend. You crushed it.
Dude, listen. I told you I just rolled in. It was a heated practice basketball for 5-year-olds. But anyway, we're ready to rock and roll tonight. There you go. At Chaboy JRich picking up my slack. So JRich, before we get into it, we're going through a 2-round rookie mock draft, 12 teams, start 10, 2 quarterbacks, 6-point passing touchdowns, PPR lineup league. We know at this point in time, quarterback, it's not really seen as the strength of the class. How much weight are you adding to the position based on the fact that this is going to be a 2-quarterback draft?
That's the biggest question, right? And I think it starts right at the top. And I'm going to have this exercise with you guys as well, is we kind of know who the top 2 to 3 quarterbacks are and approximately where they're going to get drafted. But outside of that, we have to make a decision. Are they going to be in this 2-round mock or are they not? Because I have my ideas of where I think some of these backup quarterbacks, let's say 3rd round or later in the NFL draft, may go. But managing that 2 QB side of things is where I'm going to have to lean on you guys as well. And I hope we can give the people some good advice as to where you may draft some of these 3rd+ round QBs in the NFL draft. Because I think there is a place for them in a 2 QB mock like this. Because when that's happening, you got to start 24 in the league when it's a 12-team league. And you got to have somebody on your bench, ideally, especially if you're contending. So I'm curious how you guys weigh that. So quite a bit of weight that I will be adding to the quarterbacks for this mock.
JRich, I'm glad that you kind of brought that up because it segues into something that I want to throw at Scott before we hit the 101. Scott, you are one of your focuses across the board in super flex formats is any backup quarterback. You want them off the waivers. You want them rostered. With this being a 2-quarterback league, again, kind of elevating the position, what are your thoughts as we sit here today with the incoming QB 3 to 5-ish range?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually an interesting class when you bring in this format. This is one of the reasons that I wanted to do it, because I think everybody knows there's 2 QBs, and then it's just completely polarizing from 2 to 6, 7, 8. Heck, we're going to be in Mobile in a couple of weeks, JRich, and there's going to be like 5 quarterbacks that I think could have some potential that could fall and get landing spots that you would go, well, they might actually have a shot to start sometime during the year. And I think that's where a lot of people don't play in 2 QB leagues. Now, I will say in Superflex, almost every format, mathematically, you always want to start a quarterback in the Superflex, almost regardless. Now, the appeal of starting QB 25 on a given week is not that high, but usually if you're in a start 10, start 11, start 12 lineup league, you're kidding yourself if the 12th player that goes into your lineup in your last flex is just better than a quarterback, right? Like a lot of times we don't have players on our bench where we go, yeah, that guy's projected to give me 15.5 points in my flex spot. Like even the worst low-end quarterbacks typically are wanting to be started in Superflex. In 2QB, it really is a rat race in terms of what are those shitty quarterbacks worth? The guys where I could tell you they don't have any longevity. They're probably going to get benched sometime before the season ends and definitely not going to survive into next year. But they have a value. They have a value that is elevated in this format. And I think that's where these picks become very interesting to discuss. What can I trade my mid-second for? Can I trade that for 12 spot starts of next year's Aiden O'Connell? If so, I might rather do that than reach on the QB5 in the class because I have to, because it's the format. But not every league is like that. I'm in plenty of 2QB leagues where you don't just buy a spot start QB from somebody that's not starting them that week because they're doing what JRich is going like, man, my 2 starters are going to be on buys at least once each.
Yep.
And if I have an injury, I'm not just going to hand you over this year's version of Gardner Minshew for a third. Superflex, you could get him for a third. But even when there's an injury here, like Cooper Rush, you weren't just getting him for nothing down the stretch because there's a really good chance that somebody was using him. So the market dynamics of how they're valued is very interesting when we discuss these picks.
Yeah, and it's going to be certainly interesting when you go from league to league. Even if they're 2 quarterbacks across the board, there is a certain league dynamic and submarket when you look at every single league. And there are some leagues that, despite it being a 2 quarterback, the value still has not shifted all that much compared to Superflex. And then some, like you said, Scott, the value just is completely through the roof, even for potential spot starts, because people aren't just giving those away. So without further ado, let's get into it, guys. We're going to be going in the order that you see us on the screen. I won't mess it up again. JRich, you're up first with that 101. What do you got for us?
I will be taking none other than the quarterback 1, as we see it for a lot of people, and probably, at least as it stands right now, the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. And I will be taking Cam Ward out of Miami at the 101. And it's strictly because of the format. In Superflex, I think you can make the argument for a player who is not Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders at 101, but in a 2QB and the way that I would play 2QB, I will be taking Cam Ward 101 pretty much no matter what. And for anyone who may be questioning why I may make that move, I will simply ask you, would you rather a Cam Ward and your RB of choice at 201, or would you rather take Ashton, Jeanty, and the scraps that are left for you at QB at the 201? And that I will let you chew on in the comments. But do you boys have any thoughts about me taking Cam Ward at the 101?
Yeah, JRich, I'm still not there, even with it being a 2 quarterback format. I like Cam Ward, the prospect. I know that you're framing it like, would you rather Cam Ward at 101 and then your running back of choice at 201? But and unfortunately, there is so much gray area when it comes to Dynasty. Roster construction is going to come into play. And I know that's, a separate conversation from just the picks themselves. But like Cam Ward, you're banking on that Tennessee situation being one that fits him, them doing right by him. And I just don't know if we can really count on them to put Cam Ward in a situation that he's going to need to be successful personally.
Yeah, and I understand that, but you also have a very talented offensive mind that they hired at head coach. You also brought in a Calvin Ridley. They drafted J.C. Latham in the first round, all to support a quarterback in Will Levis. And Will Levis was awful, and they didn't like him, and they're going to replace him. And I think that Cam Ward can do a much better job. He's even more experienced than Levis. He's played in multiple systems, multiple conferences, and been successful at just about every route of his career. I don't necessarily think he's QB1, but per the format and for all the reasons that people like Cam Ward, I think he will be successful and will have value in Dynasty to boot. So he has to be my 101.
So I'm curious because I think this is where people immediately get tripped up because they're just looking at this pick as Cam Ward, right? But I've played in a lot of leagues like this. So let me ask you, JB, if you are in a league and you only have 2 quarterbacks and your 2 QBs are Trevor Lawrence and Dak Prescott, are you trading one of them away right now straight up for the 101?
No.
Right. Now, a lot of people in a super flex format would go, I would take the 101 over Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence all day, right? Like they're like, but then they immediately go, well, what would I do with it? And in a super flex, what would they not have? The pressure to have to draft Cam Ward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So immediately this gets flipped around to where a lot of the driving of what would make JRich pick the quarterback there is the person that's drafting the QB here probably needs one.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be difficult to go, well, Jay, who do you prefer, Jordan Love or Cam Ward? Just in a vacuum answer. Who do you prefer?
Jordan Love.
Okay. T-Law or Cam Ward?
T-Law.
Dak Prescott or Cam Ward?
Dak Prescott.
Brock Purdy or Cam Ward?
Brock Purdy.
Okay, so at some point, I'm going to get to one that you don't prefer over Cam Ward, but I would also bet you that it's going to be very hard to just go trade for the one you like more with this pick. So it's probably, do you need a quarterback? And if you do, you almost don't have a choice but to take them when you know they're getting this draft capital. You know what I mean? Because even if he's not good, you're going to have a buffer and an asset that is going to have value here that it's hard to get him otherwise. Not to belabor it because we're going to talk about it more, but it just feels like in these formats, you are very, very pressured to have to draft the QB right here when they're there, to be honest.
All right. If nothing else on the 101 in Cam Ward, I'm going to take my 101 at the number 2 spot. I despite the format, guys, I'm still going to go Ashton Jeanty, the running back 1 in this class. I truly believe, I know he's coming from a conference where you could question the strength of schedule, but like he checks every single box from an analytics perspective that I'm looking at. He is top tier from a rushing market share and an efficiency perspective. He's top tier when you look at his involvement in the passing game. He truly can be a factor on all 3 downs. And I think that a team that spends a top 15 pick on him, he's going to have the opportunity to show why he is the top running back prospect in this class. So for me, Ashton Jeanty, 102, lock and load.
JB, do you make this pick? I know we don't have rosters in front of us. Do you make this pick if you're not feeling good about your either first or especially second quarterback?
That's where it's going to get interesting. And again, league dynamic is going to come into play because like I said, we've been in leagues where you cannot get a quarterback. And the only time to do so is by taking them in the rookie draft if you didn't take them in a startup draft or get lucky along the way. So for me, roster construction would come into play. Shedeur Sanders here would obviously be on my mind as a viable option. Just again, from a profile perspective, I as crazy as it is to say a running back has more insulated value over the next year and a half than a quarterback, I think that's the case here. I mean, look at the way that people have been willing to pull the plug so quickly on these quarterbacks. And some of it ties into what we've seen from an NFL perspective. But look at how Bryce Young's value fell. Look at the way people, Anthony Richardson goes from a top tier dynasty asset to nobody wants him at all. Obviously, very different profiles, very different ways that they win when you compare him to the top quarterbacks in this class. But people are very quick to pull the plug, and that has to be a concern for dynasty managers when we're looking at insulated value.
Yeah, well, I'm going to shock you guys because it's obvious who goes here at the 103. I get back-to-back picks, so it's obviously Shedeur Sanders at the 103. That's not going to shock anybody. But I got to say, and if you haven't watched it, go to the Ray GQ feed and look at his mock that he did with Thor Nystrom. And I texted Ray after I watched that video, and I said, Thor has given me full reign to draft Jalen Milroe higher than everybody else. And that is going to be the pick here at 104. I'm sure the comments are going to blow up with there's no way Jalen Milroe should go ahead of the wide receiver 1 or the RB2 or RB3 or even the wide receiver 2. But listen, guys, it's the format. I'm probably doing everything I can to trade up from the 104. If I don't have a QB, I'm going, what do you want? I already tried to trade with JB at 102. Like, dude, you're going to be able to get your RB2 at the 104. can't you just kick me that pick? And why are you wasting it on a damn running back? So I'm going to throw the board into chaos here because that may force one or two more quarterbacks off the board in this draft now that I took back-to-back quarterbacks at 3 and 4. So here's the board staring at you, JB. 105. What do you do?
Really quick on Milroe, is that with the expectation that he is going in the first round of the NFL draft?
Yes, that I forgot to mention that earlier. We are drafting this like we are already making bets that these players are going to be slotted in the spots that we think, whether that's landing spot and or draft capital. I'm betting on a first round Jalen Milroe. Now that might not be as high as where Thor and Ray took him. I think they took him at like 106.
Yeah, I did the Raiders.
Like that's, if he goes in the top 6, like you're drafting him here. You know what I mean? Whether you like him or not, that's a top 10 drafted quarterback. He's going in this spot. But even if he goes mid first, and I will say NFL teams don't draft quarterbacks in the late first anymore. It used to be they would try to get into the first round to get a QB. Now it's like, dude, we're going to dare the playoff team to waste a pick on a quarterback or a team to trade up ahead of us and give up capital to snipe us from pick 34 and get him at pick 29, like the Lamar Jackson pick when he got drafted. That doesn't happen anymore. So if you don't see him go in the top 20, he's not getting picked in the first round, which means this is probably not a great pick. But I'm just betting that he goes in the first, 100%.
I would even say he needs to go before that from an NFL perspective, because like you get into the 20s that you're looking at people like Kenny Pickett, and that's going to be in people's mind.
And Kenny Pickett would have gone in this same exact spot because no one necessarily knew he sucked when he got 100%. Drafted there. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel good. It does not feel good to take this gamble this early when there's 3 or 4 other locked in players, but that's the format.
If Jalen Milroe goes in the first round of the NFL draft, especially let's say he goes top 10, top 15, you look at a lot of his metrics and peripheral stats like pressure to sack rate, low enough. He's put up almost 1,600 career rushing yards, 33 touchdowns. Like you take Jackson Dart away, Jalen Milroe has almost as much rushing production as the rest of the class combined. Like it's crazy to think about. And the way the league has moved and the way that dynasty managers look at it, we want those dual threat quarterbacks. So I'll be honest, this was not on my radar to begin with, but if he goes in the first, I can't knock on that.
Yeah, I like it, Scott. It's, you said Kenny Pickett, but it'd be like if Kenny Pickett ran a 4.3 and had a rocket arm that the NFL is going to love, right? And even when you looked at Dane Brugler's mock, he had him at 34 to the Giants, not in the first round, but a spot where they need a quarterback and you can project an immediate starter offensively. So you could say top 15, top 20, but I think there's a lot of scenarios where even as a second rounder, he could project as the opening day starter or close to it for an NFL team. Higher than I thought he'd go, Scott, but I really love the boldness. And again, it's about the 2 QB format and what you get from Jalen Milroe. People are going to say Anthony Richardson. I'm going to say much more polished quarterback, way more starting experience, and arguably even more rushing upside than Anthony Richardson.
Now, let's make it clear. I'm not saying they're similar in Jalen Milroe and Kenny Pickett. I just want to make that very clear for everybody. But at the 105, I'm going to double tap running back. I'm living back in the running back heyday, Scott. I'm going with my running back too, Omarion Hampton. Again, this dude, he gives you everything that you're looking for in a back. And from an analytical perspective, he's right there with Ashton Jeanty. He is right there. He doesn't have the gaudy numbers when you incorporate the strength of schedule and the caliber of their opponents, but Omarion Hampton, he checks every single box. He's going to get top 50 draft capital, in my opinion. He's going to be a workhorse in the NFL. And with the way the running back landscape is, and we talk about war, and we talk about the way the running backs really outperformed expectations last year, I think that trend is going to continue here in 2025. So load me up with 2 prospects, Ashton Jeanty and Omarion Hampton, that I have all the belief in the world in.
I like it, JB. It's a good pick. Hampton's a good running back. I don't have him in my tier 1 at running back, so I'd probably take him a little bit later. But Scott, do you have any thoughts on Hampton here at the 105? Would you go the running back direction? Would you go another direction? Because he doesn't project as a first rounder right now. The only guys who do are, Caleb Johnson and, of course, Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, I think we're going to get, and we've talked about on some of the other mocks, we're going to get a lot of running backs that go from the mid-second to the mid-4th. And hell, I think you can even look at running backs today that if you are a mid to late 4th rounder, it really just depends on where you land. You know, where we will draft a late 4th round running back over a mid 3rd round running back if the depth chart says that we should. Like, I don't think that draft capital is the same steam that it used to be. It used to be like you had to get day 2 capital as an RB. Yeah. But in JRich, in today's Dynasty game, like, it's so year to year, not just the running back, but like everything is year to year. The fear of, your day 3 running back is going to get replaced after a year. Like, yeah, the odds are that's going to happen. But if he can play, there's also odds that he survives on a depth chart with a role for multiple years. He just may not have the role that you got, like the Dameon Pierce situation, right? That's the perfect one. Dameon Pierce will be on a depth chart probably for another 3-4 years. He just will never have the role that he had as a rookie, but that doesn't mean he might not have a 3 or 4 game stretch again where he's usable. So it's not really a busted pick, especially as you get later on. But you are up back to back for you, Jay.
Yes, you guys made it super easy for me. JB wants to take the running backs. Scott got the quarterbacks. So I will take the only tier 1 wide receivers. I'll be taking Teteoira Mcmillian, who is my wide receiver 1, and Luther Burden III at 106 and 107. As I mentioned, my only first tier wide receivers in this draft, at least as it stands right now. And so I'm getting that bit of a tier break. I'm getting the top 2 guys on my board as it stands currently. I think both are extremely talented. Teteoira Mcmillian, he's kind of a weird projection because he's great after the catch, but he's also great going up and getting the ball. So he's not just a big body receiver who can play above the rim. He's a player that is also great after the catch. And that's where, when you talk about projections for Mcmillian, it's weird because very few players can kind of do all of those things. And then you have Burden, who's just a yak monster. And in my opinion, was heavily limited by his QB play at Missouri. Very strong when he gets the ball in his hands, whether it's short, he can do it in the rushing game, and he still can get downfield quite well, better than I think people realize. Again, limited by that quarterback play. The top 2 receivers on my board and the top 2 players on my board remaining, Teteoira Mcmillian at 106 and Luther Burden III at 107.
I said this on the one quarterback mock that we put together regarding Luther Burden. I said, I think there's a better chance than not that over the next 2-3 years, he's the one that has the most fantasy points and the highest dynasty value across the board looking at these wide receivers. Not necessarily a knock on Tet McMillan, but it's the profile that just I absolutely love in Luther Burden with, looking at the contested target share, the college dominator, breakout age, all the good stuff. He's giving you the receiving yards per team pass attempt. And again, Tet, I'm right. JRich and I are in lockstep right here. Tet and Luther Burden, they're 1 and 2 for me, and there is a tier break. So, I can't argue the picks. I'm just a little upset you guys are going to keep making me take running backs.
Yeah, let it rip. I have, I guess, real quick for JRich. I know we don't pick these same picks they're for different teams, right? You're not assuming the same player has back-to-back picks, but doesn't it kind of feel, if you really like a receiver in this draft, that, I hate to say it, but is this a draft where the receivers are kind of the scarce asset? Like, if you really, especially drafting today, it feels like there's only 1 or 2 more receivers that I'm very confident have a shot to even go in the top 40-ish. There's probably only 1 or 2 more that I think even have a prayer of going in the first round. But doesn't it feel like in these mocks, it's very easy to go, I can get a running back that I like way later. Receivers are actually the scarce asset in this class. Doesn't it kind of feel that way? Like, I don't hate the double tapping there. If somehow you had a couple picks, like, I don't hate that because you may actually change the board a little bit because people still like their receivers. Yeah.
No, you really hit on it there, Scott. And we talked about the scarcity at quarterback, but the scarcity is also at the top end at wide receiver. We're used to, 2, 3, 4 even wide receivers that are quote unquote tier 1 up there in the top 20 picks or so. And that's not necessarily going to be the case this year, especially when you have a player like Travis Hunter, who I'm sure we'll get to eventually, who, how much wide receiver is he going to play? Is he a full-time corner and a part-time receiver? And where do you draft that in fantasy, especially in a 2 QB league? And you already have a Tet McMillian and a Luther Burden that seem to be projected for top 20 draft capital at worst. I would even argue, JB, that both those receivers get drafted before Ashton Jeanty, but we'll see. And to your point about the draft as a whole, Scott, Brugler had 8 wide receivers in his top 64. So that just kind of tells you, like, it's very top heavy. And then there's some guys maybe in the second round, but there's not going to be this plethora of top end wide receivers, only 4 in the first round as it stands right now. And I don't really think that's going to change.
And that's crazy to think about with, recent drafts where we were getting loaded up with 7, 8 guys going in the first because of the way the position has shifted, and all these NFL teams, just like we're talking about getting quarterbacks in the rookie drafts, they're trying to get those wide receivers where they have control over the contract in the rookie, first 4 or 5 years, if there's an option. Like, it's interesting that it has shifted that greatly, but I don't know if it's because of an actual shift in philosophy. It just comes down to the shift in the talent of the position.
Yeah, talent scarcity.
Yep.
For this draft class, at least.
All right, well, boys,
You're up.
I'm taking my running back 3 and tiered with Omarion and Hampton in that tier 2. I will take Caleb Johnson. Like, it's a broken record, but I was saying this on our recent top 5 show that we did for Trending Fantasy, but so many of these guys, these running backs, they have great size. They give you durability, not a lot of injuries throughout college. They give you receiving upside, and they're going to give you that 3 down ability. And for Caleb Johnson, it's no different than what I was saying for Omarion and Hampton. So Caleb Johnson, 108. I'm, in my head, this team, I'm stacked at receiver. I got strong quarterbacks. Now I'm bringing it home with a strong running back class.
Yeah, this is where just my experience playing in leagues like this, these picks are very hard to value in this type of format, because if you needed a quarterback and you're picking in the back half of the first, the odds you can go even by who is the grossest QB that you still would have to pay a first for, like
probably AOC right now, Aiden O'Connell. He's currently the starter, right?
Probably a tier higher, but like it would cost you one of these picks maybe in the next 4, 5, 6 to get like a Derek Carr type, to Matthew Stafford type.
Can you even get Geno Smith, Matthew Stafford?
No, I don't think. I'd be shocked if you could.
But the thing is, you already know when you buy one of those guys, you're already paying for like QB 20 or below production, and you're paying for job volatility as early as like this offseason. Matt Stafford could still retire. Any of those guys could be benched mid-season next year if they're there. Not Stafford so much, but the other two. So you really feel like, man, it really sucks to have to use one of these picks on one of those types of QBs. So you see why people go, at some point in the draft, I'm just going to start taking any QB that I think could start. This is where I'm like, I'll get a cheaper version of, Justin Fields or Jameis Winston. Like, I'll just roster every one of them, hoping that I get lucky with 1 or 2 instead of paying. Does it ever feel good to give up the 109 for Derek Carr? You just don't want to have to do that. You'd rather just address it in a different way. So I'm going to do that. There are 4 more QBs on my radar. Okay. As much as I really want to put the screws to the league and take 2 more, I'm not going to do it because I don't think you guys are going to take it. So this draft has fallen perfectly if I'm in this spot. I'm going to go with the Ohio State running backs back to back. I think it really starts to get into a tier break there with Nick Singleton going back to school. I think these two have the chance to both be, I don't know about RB1, but I wouldn't be shocked if we look up in 2 months and one of these guys is RB2. And it's not that close for some people. I've already seen some people with Henderson as RB2, and I've seen some people talking about Judkins has been overshadowed by Henderson. And he might even be better if he would have been on Iowa or wherever it might have been. So I think these are 2 easy picks for me. And back to you, JB. Now it's tough, I think, personally.
For me, I'm gonna go Emeka Egbuka. We talk about the tier break after Tet and Luther at the 106, 107 when JRich double tapped there, but I think that even a bigger tier break is coming here very quickly on the horizon when we discuss wide receivers. So give me Egbuka. I know he's going to be one of those guys that has ran primarily out of the slot. Hopefully he goes to a situation where we're going to be utilizing 3 receivers, and it's not going to be, I said, like a Jaden Reed situation where the talent's clearly there, but Green Bay doesn't want to get him in situations where he's not in the slot and they're not running 11 personnel. But Egbuka, 111. Let's go.
Interesting, JB. So you decided to take the pure receiver who does project as a first rounder. So I like the pick there. Really pissed at Scott because I wanted Henderson. Henderson's my RB2 right now. You talked about how some people have him there. I just think he's electric compared to all the other players. I understand the injury history, but I really, really like the skill set that he provides, the breakaway speed, the pass catching ability, all that he can do. But I am on the clock at the 112 right now.
JR, let me tell you really quick. If he didn't take Henderson, he wasn't making it to you.
Nice. So no, I like that. I like that because I haven't seen a lot of love for Hendo, and I'm a very big fan, and he is in my tier 1 of prospects. And I will take my last 2 here. And while I know that Scott's looking at QB, so my next 2 probably aren't going to be available with my next pick, I will take at the 112. We will start with Travis Hunter, the wide receiver corner out of Colorado. Initially, I was very much off of drafting Travis Hunter because, again, how much wide receiver is he really going to play? I forget who put it out, but there was a poll of some GMs talking about Hunter saying, where do you think he's going to play, wide receiver or corner? And it was 3-1 in favor of full-time corner, part-time receiver. But with that, there was also the mention of 7 to 8 targets a game still available for this full-time corner. And I was like, well, if that's the case, I'm on board with the Travis Hunter, especially at the 112. So Travis Hunter will be my 112. And at 201, I just think it's silly that he's still available, but I understand the format. I understand where we're at, but I just love Tyler Warren. He is by far and away the tight end 1 in this class, and he's going to be drafted probably in the top 20 of the NFL draft. I understand we like these running backs, but when you talk about a player that could be a true difference maker, maybe not quite Brock Bowers, but probably the closest player we would project to come close to that 100 reception mark, 90 receptions, be heavily involved in an offense from day one, it is none other than Penn State tight end Tyler Warren, coming off of JB and Scott, a 100 reception season at tight end in college, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Even in the format, I know Scott and we differ a little bit whenever you remove the tight end premium, but I still had Tyler Warren in my top 12, even in this format, to be honest with you. And Travis Hunter, just to be very quick on him, it's such a unique situation, obviously, and nobody truly knows how it's going to play out.
Absolutely.
So if you're in a rookie draft, pre-NFL draft, even if you're in a rookie draft, post-NFL draft, where we don't have clarity right away, it's a high risk, high ceiling, low floor situation. So you just have to be willing to do that. And maybe if you had the 112, you were coming off a championship, then you're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, I think the thing with me about Travis Hunter is there's been enough people out there that say he wouldn't immediately be able to step in and be a shutdown corner in the NFL. Yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I've asked a couple people this, I asked Ray this, and I don't think there's a clear answer, but asking people that actually played the game at a fairly high level, how hard would it be to go to the NFL and play 100+ snaps a game? He did it in college, but that was also in
the Big 12,
the Pac-12 and the Big 12 versus the NFL. And so it's hard for me to see a player that is getting only 35 to 40% of the offensive snaps. He ain't getting 8 targets a game. Like, there might be that available, but to say he's just going to get those when he's out there, we're talking about breaking like targets per route run records right there. If he's getting 8 targets a game and he's only playing 20 snaps, you know what I mean? So I don't know. The dam is going to break, and I actually can't really argue with taking him at any point in the draft, because if you take him early, you're like, he's going to be a receiver. He's going to bust at corner, and then they're going to go, well, let's just throw him out there on offense. And then it's like, holy shit, he's our best receiver. We should play him more. Yeah. Or the other way around. Like, he's just becomes what Deion Sanders was, a dabbler in the NFL, which we all remember Deion. Maybe JRich doesn't, but I remember Deion playing in the NFL. And he was so fun. But then you look back at his NFL like offensive usage numbers, and you're like, dude, he didn't play that much. You know what I mean? Like
36 receptions was his peak.
Yeah, and as a kid, I'm going, oh, Deion was a stud receiver. And then it's like, yeah, I just remember the couple big plays that he made. For fantasy. It would have been a complete nothing, So I don't know, man. That Travis Hunter is the most fun player that we've had in a rookie draft analysis wise in a long time. So
yep.
All right. So it's me.
202.
No,
it's JB.
Oh, it's JB. I tried to take your pick.
Well, I mean, I could probably let you go because I don't think you're going to take my guy here because
you're not going to take mine. So feel free to go. All you.
I'm going to take my wide receiver 4 in the class. A little bit older of a prospect, but with everything stemming from the COVID and the aftermath, longer time spent in college. I'm going to take Trey Harris. He is just a big play monster. Whenever we did the mock with Ray Scott, I broke down some of his numbers and some of his numbers against man specifically, and they were just through the roof. So Trey Harris, again, just a big play waiting to happen. I will take him at 202, even in this format.
So I got to ask you guys, I'm about to take 2 quarterbacks. People are going to hate it. They're going to absolutely hate it because they're going to hate the names.
They'd be my next picks.
And there's actually 4 that I could consider. So I'm going to probably be the one that ends up taking the other 2 as well. Unless JRich likes one of them that I don't know. But at this point, guys, isn't this a point where, especially if you are a QB needy team, and when I say QB needy, you might only have 2, right? If you have, I don't know, Geno Smith and Justin Herbert, you probably feel okay, but do you feel great in terms of being able to get through a season with those guys? Or is this the range where you're like, I guarantee you, JRich, if I take 4 more quarterbacks, 3 of them I'm lighting on fire. But I also saw what people were willing to pay for Will Levis after his first game, what people are willing to pay for Spencer Rattler down the stretch. I don't think this is a bad pick just to say I'm taking a QB, and if it expires into 0, what did I really lose, guys? What did I lose if I rip off Jackson Dart here? And I am truly conflicted. I should almost go in another direction because I don't think anybody's going to want to pick these other 3. But I'm going to have to lean on and a smart person told me this on the last mock, was if these players are declaring, they must have gotten good feedback on the NFL.
Yes, Scott!
Versus there's no way that player will ever get a good grade. Oh, shit. He actually declared for the draft. And I'm going to pick his teammate here. If anybody remembers my Isaiah Bond take from the first mock. Oh, there's no way he'll ever get drafted. Well, but he declared. And I've heard that same logic used by a lot of smart people. So I'm going to rip Jackson Dart and Quinn Ewers, and I'm just going to wipe the league clean of QBs.
Wow. Getting the air horn sound.
Scott, you nailed it, man. You just fucking nailed it. Like, I was wondering where we would put those 2 guys because of all the quarterbacks left. It's Jackson Dart and Quinn Ewers. And for exactly the reason you outlined, report came out today. Is it true or not? I don't know. Quinn Ewers been offered $6 million. He's been offered $8 million. But for some reason, he is still coming out and declaring for the NFL draft. And in my opinion, maybe he's not a 2nd round pick, but I think he's at worst going to be picked in the 3rd round. And I think at that point, you would consider him here. And a lot of people like Dart, and a lot of people think that he can be drafted in the top 3 rounds as well. So those are the last 2 quarterbacks that I feel pretty good about drafting. If they go up in flames, like you said, I'm fine with it because even today, I think they are top 3 round picks. And that for me is worth the investment here, even in the early 2nd round of this rookie draft.
And I will just say this.
Profile, he presents such upside. especially at this point, because I mean, go ahead, Scott. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say that people will call bullshit on the fact that Quinn Ewers got offered that much. But if you look at the quarterback landscape in college in terms of who's returning, he's the best quarterback by far that would be available. So you may think he stinks, and
Carson
the country
Beck's getting
thinks he
$4
stinks.
million, and tell me Quinn Ewers can't get $8 million?
Right. The thought of, and this was big last week with the playoff games, right? The thought of like Quinn Ewers, Drew Allar being available in the portal, like the national media is like, these guys are garbage. There's a ton of contending teams next year that are like, dude, we would give them everything for a year. We
Notre
would
Dame,
love
Ohio State, both of them need quarterbacks. How much are they going to pay to get their quarterback next year? Probably at least $5 million, both of them. And those guys stink. Imagine what Will Howard is getting paid right now at Ohio State. Imagine. That's ridiculous, man. And he stinks.
value to you, JB. Value to you here.
At 205, I'm going to take Dylan Sampson, my running back 6. I think he's going to be somebody that really elevates himself and increases and improves his draft stock over the course of the offseason here, especially when the combine rolls around. Probably going to be one of the better 40 times that we see. So for me, Dylan Sampson, running back 6 at 205. And I'm just going to turn it right over to JR here at 206 and 207. Double tap that.
Can I ask you, what is it about Dylan Sampson that you like? Not to say that I don't think he's good, but I do think that he's a little bit overrated in the way that people talk about him. Not so much because I don't think he's talented, because he can break tackles. He's very fast. But even still, he strikes me as kind of a one-cut runner type of guy, and he doesn't quite have the vision that is going to be required to play in a zone scheme in the NFL. Or especially if he plays in a gap scheme, it could be tough for him. And so when you compare him to some of the other running backs, I don't think his vision is quite up to snuff, even though all the physical tools, I'm sure the metrics look great, but playing in that Tennessee veer and shoot, it keeps things very wide open. So where if he breaks one tackle, he should be gone to the house. And that's the reason why I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on him from either the analytics or the film.
Oh, film. That's a 4-letter F word I don't mess with. But no, analytically speaking, they're lower thresholds, but giving me the reception market share max and average, giving me the yards per carry, the receiving college dominator, the scrolling through here, max of almost 2.8 rush yards per team rush attempt, which is right around that 70th percentile. I think he's a fine prospect. But really, it's just because in the middle of the second, we're taking our shots on upside. I talked about it last year, Scott. I don't know if you remember, but we talked about Jalen Wright, and it's kind of a similar situation. He was maybe going a little bit earlier than this point in the draft, but, going to a situation that even if you're not projected to get a ton of the workload, if you have that big play potential, you're going to have, whether it's a value spike or some value insulation, you're going to have people that are still interested. So for me, it's not necessarily by any means that I absolutely love him. And you could, running back 6 through 10, it's kind of a crapshoot for me at this point. But I'm just going with the upside in the speedster, Dylan Sampson.
All right, cool. I will take the next 2 running backs I have on my board. I'm going to be taking RJ Harvey, the running back out of UCF, followed by Devin Neal, the running back out of Kansas. Let's start with Harvey because the big thing for me that screams on his tape is the vision. When I compare it to a player like Sampson, I'm like, man, he's very patient. He waits for his blocks to develop. He sets up blocks very well and was very effective. Now, again, he's playing at UCF, so the competition compared to the SEC is definitely not the same. But when I talk about translatable skills to the NFL, his vision is, to me, at the level that I would say is a translatable skill. And that's the reason why I really like RJ Harvey. And then you look at Devin Neal, he's great catching the ball. He's great running the ball. He has great vision as well. He's set sub blocks very well. He's also been a very productive player over the last few seasons at Kansas. I think both of them are going to be great running backs. For me, with Harvey, it's the vision, and Neal is just a can't-miss running back. He's not the fastest guy, but he can do everything you want. He reminds me a lot of what Kyren Williams is in the NFL right now. Not quite in the pass protection, because that was really his calling card when he was at Notre Dame, but I think he can do similar things like we see Kyren McLaurin doing in the NFL right now from being a do-it-all back that can play on all three downs.
It's funny. I pulled a bunch of Bengals fans and I said, basically, the best thought for me of what they should do is just draft another Chase Brown and just roll two of them out there as like a committee or a platoon so the teams don't know what they're doing. And the two most common names that were listed. And I said, this isn't going to be a guy that's going in the second round, maybe not even the third round. It's like, what guy can we get early day 3 that is a Chase Brown clone? And you know who the two names were that kept getting mentioned in the comments?
Probably
Dylan Sampson and Devin Neal. Dylan Sampson, and just the compliments to him. Because I said, I don't want them. Everyone mocks, and this is kind of a thing of how these backfields are going to shake out. If a team has like Devon Achane, everybody mocks like a big bruising running back there. You know what I mean? Or like Chase Brown, they need an early down grinder. It's like, what if a team just says we need a guy similar to what we already have so then we can play them interchangeably? Yeah. You know, like not every backfield has to be Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameer or David Montgomery. You know what I mean? So
it's what Tennessee did with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears.
And I like that. I like that approach better as long as they're well-rounded enough to where you can't go, we have to play this guy every single time we're in this situation. So that's why I love Devin Neal. That would be my ideal pick if I was picking for Cincinnati. But just, it was interesting. Those two names are the ones that came up.
Well, at 208, this isn't going to surprise anybody. But I'm going running back again, boys.
I thought you were going to go quarterback, JP.
I was hoping you'd go quarterback.
I know. I think I threw a curveball there. Nobody was expecting the running back. But for me, a big riser, obviously, throughout the season, but Cameron Scadaboo, my running back 7 in the class. Broken record again, but almost a 15% receiving college dominator. Third best in the class behind RJ Harvey and Caleb Johnson. I like my backs that can catch passes, and Scadaboo can be involved in that regard. And he's also able to give you the workload that we're looking from a rushing perspective. Over 3 yards per team rush attempt is best throughout college. So he's another well-rounded back that I think can be utilized in a lot of situations. So Scadaboo,
Scabadabadoo.
Good thing JB is not on that text thread that we're on with the Scadaboo screenshot.
Neither of us were
yesterday, right?
Scadaboo. There's no way. So
it'll come out eventually, JB, but you can explain it, Jay.
But basically, there was this play, right? Scadaboo's at like the 15-yard line. It's him and one player. And Ray sends the screenshot. You got to score on this play, don't you? And he gets blown up at the 2-yard line. It doesn't score. And we're like, yeah, this is who Cam Scadaboo is. He's a grinder. He can catch passes very well. I've seen him make some crazy catches, even though the one he made in the semifinal, or I guess it was a quarterfinal now, was absolutely a push-off. And I'm not letting that slide. He's not my favorite running back. And JB, I just want you to project right now for the people, what is Cam Scadaboo's 40 time?
4.52.
You think he's going to run a 4.5?
4.52.
Wow.
I would have set the line at 4.6, and I still would have taken the over if I were you. But
4.52.
We'll
bookmark it. 4.52.
That track in Indy better play as fast as it's been playing. Because Cam Scadaboo running the 4.52 would be interesting. But I think you are up, Scott, now at the 209 and 210.
Yeah, I was thinking somewhere between like Audric Estime and Elijah Holyfield, which is like a low
4.8s,
low 4.6s at best, but we'll see. I think the funny part was that to continue the story that Jay was saying was not only did he not score, but then punished the defender instead of not scoring, and then talk shit because he ran the guy over, but didn't get the touchdown. That's just. But to be fair, Jay,
the type of back I want.
Well, no, here.
He's going to be a fan favorite for sure.
This will be the type of player that if he does that to an NFL player in the Hall of Fame game, people will be like, oh my God, he's going to start.
As the 4th back in the Hall of Fame game. He's going to be a fan favorite, but that's where like we talk about it a lot is the ADV versus the real value. Like, okay, he's going to talk shit. He's going to blow people up. He's going to break tackles. People are going to like him. but I will save my eval a bit because he will be at the Senior Bowl, so we'll get to see him next to some other very talented running backs, and hopefully he can hold up. But if not, then he's kind of about where I'd place him, either here or definitely later.
And if you're going to draft for the ADV, he is
number one.
You have to have the discipline to move off the ADB, though, because a lot of times people go, "Oh, that guy has a lot of ADV," but then they fall in love with the reasons for the ADV, and then they don't trade him, and then they're like, "I'm going down with the ship." So,
yeah.
All right, my last two picks.
Over to you.
I'm doing this because we're probably going to do another 24 mocks on this channel before the NFL draft, and I'm pretty sure I'm never going to be able to draft these guys ever. And so we're going to get them into this mock. So these are the other two quarterbacks that I think could be draftable. You said it earlier, Jay, and I didn't want to give it away. But is there a world where Will Howard sneaks into the top 3 rounds and he is a draftable QB? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
He's a decent runner.
Yes.
He's probably going to be a national champion, and we know that matters for whatever reason.
He will be a leader. He'll probably be the leader at the Senior Bowl in terms of he's leading the offenses, telling everybody where to line up.
Yep.
He's got a decent arm. Like he looks the part until you get him in a game, probably.
I wouldn't be shocked if a team takes a shot at him in the 4th round, because they're going to look at him and say, man, yeah, he had all these playmakers at Ohio State, but he held his own, and someone still has to throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka. And, well, Will Howard was that guy. I think that maybe there's a chance he get drafted to the 4th round. That national championship aura, it just shines brighter at the NFL draft. It simply does. And I see you have Kyle McCord here, another former Ohio State quarterback. Talk to the people about Kyle McCord.
You have to keep the order of things and take Will Howard over Kyle McCord, because that's what Ohio State did. But I'm excited to talk to him because I don't know, Jay might have seen it, but I've been following old Damian Parson, and he has talked about Kyle McCord for months. Like, oh, this is my guy. I really like him. And I think this is a player that's not going to have any ADV, right? People are going to remember that he got cast off for Will Howard, who won the national championship. So it's just going to be, this guy can't play. But I do think if there's another quarterback that comes out of Mobile and people say is the best passer there, I think it could be Kyle McCord. That doesn't mean he's going to get really good draft capital. We're talking, 3rd round at best for these guys. But I'm also projecting that because there is such a dip at QB, that there's going to be a couple of them that get taken a little higher than we expect. I mean, there's been some bad quarterbacks, guys, that have gone in the 3rd or 4th round. You look at like the CJ Beathard's of the world was a 3rd round pick. There's quarterbacks that immediately get, Kyle Trask, Davis Mills a couple of years ago. Like, the fact that Davis Mills started for 30 games and Kyle Trask has never played, that's just luck. But that draft capital typically means you get thrown in there at some point. So landing spot will matter, but I think these are the last 2 draftable QBs. So they're my last 2 picks, because they will never get picked again in one of these mocks unless we go out to probably 4 rounds.
There you go. And I think I'm going to take the same player that I took in this spot in our last mock, but Alec Iamaner. Again, I have a bunch of wide receivers falling in below him. I know Matthew Golden is a riser for a lot of people. I know Xavier Restrepo is getting some hype, but for me, Alec Iamaner, another deep threat ability when it comes to the wide receiver position. Dealt with some poor quarterback play. We talked about that earlier with
Burden.
Yeah, with Luther Burden.
Brady Cook. Yuck.
And I think he's a guy that we talk about draft capital, probably going to be maybe late day 2-ish, but somebody that could possibly set himself up for success in the NFL.
JB, I got to ask, is there another receiver, and I'm curious because it's your last pick, JRich, is there another receiver you think that will have more ADV than Iamaner will? I think there's a couple that if I'm just drafting for this player could do something that people are going to fall in love with. It feels like there's other receivers. I'm not nitpicking the pick, but I think there's probably other receivers for that reason. What do you think?
Yeah, next guy for me would have been Matthew Golden. I think he's a more talented receiver. I love what Iamaner does, especially in the air and in the red zone. He's very talented in that respect, but I think Golden has shown throughout the year that he's a much more complete receiver. He's dependable. He's literally the only good receiver in this Texas offense, at least at receiver. They do have a good tight end in Gunnar Helm, but when you look to Quinn Ewers, and the reason why he was successful was because of one dude, and that was Matthew Golden. Whenever his name was called, he was delivering almost every single time. And I think he's going to be a massive riser, not just through the process, but even potentially into the first round. You look at what Brugler did. Brugler had him at 40 overall going to New Orleans in his mock, ahead of Trey Harris, ahead of Io Manor, ahead of Jaden Higgins, who was also another player who was drafted in that mock. So I think when you look we have 4 guys kind of at the top, and it seems like Golden right now is in pole position for that 5th spot, and he seems to be separating himself, at least with his play on the field, and especially in some of those big games. I think that will matter.
You're up, Jay.
So I'm going to go with a fan favorite, and while Ray GQ is not on the mock, I will make sure that he is well represented, because there's a few spots I could have went, and I thought about going with Golden here because I think he will get the draft capital. But a player that I just can't help but think that he has an NFL trait that is probably number 1 in the class. It is none other than Woody Marks out of USC. And when you turn on his tape, you cannot help but see a player who simply explodes through the hole. He's not going to be the guy who's going to break a ton of tackles. He's great in the receiving game as well. He'll probably be a day 3 guy at best. But Woody Marks, the running back out of USC, I would highly suggest anyone who hasn't really watched him a bunch or hasn't seen him, his burst is probably the best in the class and could be the best in this class, because he explodes the moment he sees a hole. He is through and he is gone. And even when you compare him to a player like Dylan Sampson, I'd say he even has more burst and is a better pass catcher than a Dylan Sampson. And so while you could look to Sampson earlier in a draft, I think Marks gives you a similar skill set at a lesser cost. And I think especially when you talk about the NFL, if you're drafting a 4th round receiver with elite burst, you're going to utilize that on offense. And so when he's on the field, you're going to utilize his best skill set, because he's not a complete back that can do a bit of everything. He's a guy that can one cut and play in a zone scheme like we've seen from HN, like we've seen from a lot of very fast running backs with really good burst, explode through a hole and run for a touchdown right away. So at 212, I will be taking Woody Marks, the running back out of USC.
I like that pick there.
We're done.
That's it.
Interesting to see a 2 QB mock where somebody takes all these QBs, just some of the players that we've drafted in other mocks, like Matthew Golden, Xavier Restrepo, Ollie Gordon, DJ Giddens, Savion Williams. I heard the Isaiah Bond shade by JRich a couple minutes ago. But it just kind of shows you in this type of, hell, Harold Fannin and Colston Loveland didn't even get picked. And I think we'll get crushed in the comments for those guys not getting picked.
Yeah,
but it's
all about it.
It's not a tight end premium. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like it doesn't make sense to just take them unless you think they're immediately your starter. Although Ray has taken Fannin and said, I'm starting him day 1. So if that's your case, then you probably would have drafted him. But yeah, JB, like, you're in leagues like this. I think my takeaway is those later picks are going to be a little more valuable, because some dummy is going to take Kyle McCord and Will Howard, and they're just going to push down, legitimate late day 2 running backs potentially into the 3rd round, which not a bad bet at this point.
Yeah, and we see that whenever there's a league that adds more value across the board to positions that we don't typically see. So you get tight end premium, you get 2 quarterback settings. Obviously, we didn't have tight end premium in this draft, but you start to get other players pushed down. And I think late 2nd, early 3rd value in a league with this format, it's a prime spot for potential.
Loveland and Fannin for me. Right around here, right at the end. Early 3rd, late 2nd. If you like Fannin or Loveland, don't hate it at all. I just wanted to take Marks in the draft because it's the last pick, and I wanted to bring him up because I think that he has a trait that people need to be aware of, regardless of his draft capital, because it will play in the NFL.
Yeah, it was a fun draft, guys. Fun draft. If nothing else, like you said, Scott, getting some new names in here. So you were a big part of that.
Yeah, looking forward to we're gonna do, and I'll put this out there because it'll hold me accountable, but I want to do a Senior Bowl only mock with all of us that are down there too, just because that will allow us to talk about even more names, and eventually we're going to expand this probably to 3 rounds, which means we'll have to speed these shows up a little bit. But Yeah, I want to get some more names on people's radar because I'm still learning a lot of the names. You know, I take away things that I hear from you guys and from Ray and from the people that he has on the channel. And when you guys talk about them on Wake Up, and then I go and I don't do the film dives, but I go and I'll do some social media searches on these players and go, okay, you know, the first 20 results when I type in Savion Williams, what does it say? And if 15 of them are this guy's overrated, I'll never draft him, this guy's shit, then right there, that's something in the back of my mind with ADV. And then there's others where you search in the name, you know, Tez Johnson, and it's like, dude, everybody has him in the top 5. And it's like, well, but I haven't seen too many people in the NFL that have him in the top 5. So there's clearly people that like him better than probably scouts do or NFL teams do. So I think that's what's interesting when you're trying to come with this ADV. Like a lot of our early picks are, you know, because we heard something cool or because we want to just put the player on people's radar. So great draft, fellas. Great draft.
All right. Make sure you are following these guys at Chaboy JRich on X and at Charles Chill FFB. I'm at the Bauer Club. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel here at DD Fantasy Football. Check out ddfantasyfootball.com. A lot of great things over there. War Machine, Trinity Tool, a lot of great resources to get you ready for the 2025 season. Hopefully you all enjoy the show. We'll catch you next time. Peace.